Incredible rescue. 12 brave heroes saved Clouded Leopard from giant python's deadly grip. It was a day that began like any other in Emily's life, but little did she know that it would soon turn into a heart-pounding saga that would send shockwaves through her small Appalachian town. Just before dawn, a spine-tingling scream of terror echoed from the thicket behind the wildlife rehabilitation center her father built with love and dedication. Emily's heart raced as she rushed out, her breath catching in her throat at the sight before her, a magnificent clouded leopard, its delicate frame ensnared by the swift coils of a monstrous python. The juxtaposition of beauty and horror made her stomach churn. Emily was no stranger to adversity. As a single mother and a veteran, she'd faced the world with fierce resilience, yet this moment put her bravery to the test. It felt as if time stood still. The emerald green foliage around her faded as the weight of the situation pressed down, threatening to suffocate the very spirit her father instilled in her. Should she risk everything to save this endangered creature, knowing how fragile their lives were? Or should she prioritize the fragile safety of her own family? With a deep breath, she shouted for help, a primal call that echoed through the hills, summoning her community. The small town rallied swiftly, with a dozen brave souls, local shop owners, retired veterans, and kind-hearted neighbors converging around her, their eyes filled with determination. Together, they embodied the spirit of neighbor helping neighbor, their collective hope brighter than the fading first light of dawn. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Yet, as they approached, dread settled in. With each step forward, the reality of the situation became more intimidating. The python, its eyes cold and calculating, tightened its grip on the leopard, and ominous doubts crept into Emily's heart. They had come together in unity, but would their courage be enough? Would it really matter if they succeeded, when the world they fought so hard to protect seemed ungrateful and indifferent? As daylight waned and hues of orange and purple filled the Appalachian sky, tension wove through the crowd. Emily felt a tightening in her chest, a heavy reminder of her past, of promises made to her father. She recalled his words, wise yet simple, "In every life lies a story worth saving." Around her, the volunteers shared their own stories of struggle, revealing cracks in their steadfast facades. One spoke of hardships in business, another, the weight of loss. In their shared vulnerability, wounds began to heal. The mission suddenly felt like more than just saving a leopard, it was a journey toward understanding what loyalty really meant. Just as they made a last attempt to save the clouded leopard, a surge of hope washed over Emily. Time was running out, and with every ounce of courage she could muster, she prepared to dive into the unknown. The grip of destiny was tightening, and in that moment, Emily knew the spirit of her father, and all they fought for, would guide them. The precious life of the leopard hung in the balance, and so too did the hearts of all those who stood beside her. Would they find the courage to face the unknown? As Emily stepped forward, adrenaline coursed through her veins. She could feel every beat of her heart, each one a reminder of what was at stake. The crowd, a blend of familiar faces, watched in a tight silence, almost holding their breath. She glanced at the leopard, its amber eyes filled with a blend of fear and trust. There was a moment of connection, and Emily felt a wave of empathy wash over her. Someone shouted, "What do we do?" The urgency in their tone pulled her back to the task at hand. "Keep calm," Emily called, her own voice cracking, but steadiness fought through the fear. "We need to distract the python." A few of the volunteers nodded, their brows furrowed in determination. The elderly gentleman with a weathered face from the bakery shouted out, "I'll grab a stick. I'll get its attention." He bolted into the bushes without waiting for a response. Others fell in behind him, gathering branches and anything that might make noise to draw the giant snake's focus away. Emily couldn't help but admire their resolve. Each of them braved moving closer to the python, a creature many would simply run from. But here they were, together, bringing their lives and stories, their past struggles, into this single act of life-saving bravery. On three, Emily shouted as they huddled closer. 1, 2, 3. In unison, they let out a raucous cheer, waving their arms like they were exploring some strange new world. The noise echoed through the trees, spilling into the quiet before dawn like a bright light shattering the dark. The python, startled, began to loosen its grip, swaying to assess the source of the commotion. Emily seized the moment. With her heart thrumming loudly, she charged forward, crouching down just outside the reach of the thrashing body. "Stay still, sweet girl," she whispered to the leopard, whose wild eyes were now filled with a glimmer of hope. With one swift movement, she snagged the edge of the leopardess collar and pulled. It was a gamble, but her years in the military prepared her for quick decisions, to act when there was no room for second-guessing. The python snarled, its cold gaze flicking to Emily, but her grip was steady as she tugged on the collar, hoping to free the leopard from its clutches. With one last desperate pull, the snake's coils began to unravel. Suddenly, the python struck, its body twisting back in a violent move, and there was a collective gasp from the gathered crowd. The moment stretched on, broken only by the sound of rustling leaves and frantic movements. Emily's breath quickened, and her thoughts racing. She felt the line between danger and salvation blur in her mind. "Get back!" yelled one of the veterans, strong and commanding. He stepped in front of Emily, his eyes steady as he brandished a large branch, ready to intercept the snake if it came barreling towards them. A brave soul, indeed. They were so close now. The python's grip slackened, and with the crowd rallying behind her with shouts and screams, Emily felt an emboldened sense of shared purpose surge through her veins. Would this be enough? Just then, the leopard broke free with a heartrending yelp and lunged toward Emily. Instinct kicked in as she scooped it up, holding it close, its fur warm against her trembling body. Relief flooded her as they faced the oncoming threat together, but the python, enraged and sensing defeat, struck again, slashing through the air. "It's not over!" Emily screamed as she ducked, heart pounding in her chest. What new danger was about to come crashing down on them? Emily felt the rush of air as the python whipped dangerously close to her face. Panic coursed through her, but she couldn't afford to succumb to fear. This was no longer just about saving the leopard, it was about pulling together an entire community to confront the unknown. "Over here!" someone shouted. It was the bakery owner, waving his stick wildly, drawing the attention of the enraged snake. The python hissed, its scales shimmering in the soft morning light, and for a moment, it hesitated. Emily took her chance. "Now! Everyone make noise!" she called, her voice cutting through the chaos. The crowd responded, a unified roar that seemed to shake the ground beneath them. Emily cradled the leopard tighter, reassuring it as she edged away from the danger, moving just far enough to give herself space to breathe. The distraction worked momentarily. The python, caught between instinct and disorientation, twisted its head towards the village voices. Emily could see the gleam of wicked intent in its yellow eyes but also sensed a flicker of uncertainty. That hesitation was her window. "Come on, girl. We can do this." Emily encouraged the leopard, its body pressed against her chest, providing comfort that they both desperately needed. She tried to remember all the survival tactics she had learned over the years, but her mind whirred with anxiety. Then, with a sudden explosion of energy, one of the volunteers, a young girl named Sarah, bounded forward, brandishing a handheld horn. "I've got this!" she yelled, a mix of defiance and fear written across her face. Taking a deep breath, Sarah blew into the horn, the sound blasting like a cannonball, shattering the morning stillness. The python recoiled, its senses thrown off once more. Emily saw her chance and darted forward. "Stay here," she whispered urgently to the leopard, setting it down beside the tree trunk. She could sense its distress but was determined to keep it safe. Just then, before Emily could position herself, the python coiled again, this time fixing its eyes right on Sarah. "Sarah! Get back!" Emily shouted, adrenaline kicking her feet into motion. The girl glanced back, uncertainty flashing in her eyes, but instead of retreating, Sarah stood firm, brandishing the horn as if it were a sword. Emily's heart raced. "Why are you standing there?" It wasn't just the fear for Sarah, it was disbelief that a young girl would willingly place herself in danger. The crowd echoed Emily's concern, murmurs of panic mixed with admiration for the bravery unfolding before them. "Come here." Another volunteer shouted, rallying others to create a barrier. Yet the python seemed to sense the shift in energy, driven by curiosity and anger. In that moment, time slowed. All the voices around Emily faded into whispers as her focus sharpened on the python. It lunged forward, aiming for Sarah, and Emily knew she had to act. With a burst of determination, fueled by a fierce protectiveness, she lunged forward. No. She couldn't let anything happen to these brave souls. The air thickened with tension. Just as Emily was within reach, the python struck again, but this time, it was no longer just about survival, it was about saving their shared spirit. Chaos erupted as the crowd broke into action. Would they manage to save Sarah, or would fear paralyze them in that harrowing moment? Hold on. Emily thought, bracing herself for whatever happened next. Because every heartbeat felt like the essence of their collective resolve, and she was ready to unleash everything she had. How far were they willing to go for each other? And would they be able to overcome the final obstacle that lay before them? Emily's heart raced as she watched the python strike, its massive body coiling with a speed she couldn't comprehend. Time felt like it slowed, the crowd's voices fading into a distant hum. She saw Sarah's defiant stance, the way she clutched the horn like a shield against impending doom. "Move, please." Emily screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. She pushed forward, driven by an instinct that had always fueled the best parts of her life: selflessness and courage. Around her, she sensed a tide shifting, more people responding to the chaos. The bakery owner, rallied by Emily's determination, stepped up boldly, wielding his stick overhead like a warrior. "We can't let this beast take our own," he shouted, his voice resonating through the crowd. It was as if a spark ignited something deep within everyone. They moved together, unknown faces turning into familiar allies. Someone grabbed a broom, another wielded a garden rake, and before Emily knew it, the villagers formed a united front against a common enemy. "Sarah, get down!" Emily yelled again, her eyes darting between the girl and the python. She couldn't leave Sarah exposed, but the girl remained rooted, eyes locked on the threat. Her trembling hands tightened around the horn, the python lunged, but amid the chaos, a determined elder woman threw a bucket of water into the snake's path. The python hesitated, startled by the sudden splash. "Keep it distracted," cried another. Emily saw Sarah flinch at the sound, finally breaking her focus, and for the first time, she turned to Emily, fear glazing her eyes. "Come on, let us go," Emily urged, hands outstretched, ready to pull her to safety. With a final second's hesitation, Sarah took a step back and then dashed toward Emily, who felt a wave of relief wash over her. She quickly tucked Sarah behind her, the girl's small frame pressing against the tree trunk along with the frightened leopard. "This is it," Emily shouted, sensing the surge of collective bravery in the crowd. "On three, everyone together. 1, 2, 3. As the villagers exploded into noise, clattering sticks, blasting horns, and rallying shouts, the python recoiled again, confusion painted across its features. It oscillated between targets, uncertain and furious. It released a deep, low hiss that echoed like a battle cry, and in that sound, Emily sensed a primal fear. Fueled by adrenaline, the bakery owner swung his stick, aiming for the python's head. The snake snapped at him, but a few others quickly joined in, each one braver than the last. The air crackled with intensity as they pushed back against the serpent's wild movements. With the snake momentarily distracted, Emily knelt beside the leopard. "Just a little longer, friend. We'll get you out of here." She patted its head, feeling the warmth and steady heartbeat and wishing with every fiber of her being that it would hold on. "Keep it distracted. Don't let it focus," came an urgent cry from the crowd, sending waves of determination rippling through them. They had coalesced into a community in this moment, united for the sake of others, and it filled Emily with hope. But as the python swung its head in anger, Emily knew the danger was far from over. What now? She thought urgently. Would they drive the beast back, or would one misstep change everything? Just then, Emily caught sight of a flicker of movement at the edge of the crowd. A little boy, no older than 6, appeared with a handful of rocks. Her heart plummeted. Would he throw them? Was this kid about to join the wild fray? Get back! She shrieked, eyes wide, but before she could reach him, the boy's expression transformed with innocent resolve, like a spark that made everything else fade away. He is not afraid. She realized with gut-wrenching awe. But could they really harness such courage against a force of nature? As the python struck again, a pivotal moment was at hand, one that could solidify their bond or tear them apart. What choice would they make when faced with a life-or-death scenario? The boy, clutching those rocks tightly, seemed oblivious to the impending danger. Emily's heart sank as he took a small step forward, staring defiantly at the giant snake. No! Come back, she shouted, panic flooding her voice. But the little boy didn't back down. His eyes sparkled with that wild mix of courage and innocence that only a child could possess. With all his might, he hurled the first rock toward the python, a glint of bravery illuminating the chaos around them. Stay where you are. She tightened her grip on Sarah, who remained frozen beside her. It was hard to believe they could sway this thick-bellied monster with mere stones. But the moment the rock collided with the python's scales, the snake whipped around, surprised and furious. The bakery owner seized this opening. Now, everyone! Move in! He commanded, his booming voice resonating through the crowd. Buzzing with newfound determination, the villagers advanced, shouting and brandishing their makeshift weapons. Emily felt a surge of adrenaline course through her veins. Inspired, she echoed their shouts, all while keeping one eye on the boy. Keep throwing. Distract it. She urged, her heart racing. The villagers, fueled by collective courage, launched whatever they could find, sticks, stones, and desperate voices, all directed at the creature. The python, now overwhelmed by the sudden assault, coiled and hissed angrily, striking out its shadows as if trying to comprehend the united front closing in on it. Yet, with every rock thrown, Emily saw a flicker of hope. But that hope was almost instantly overshadowed by dread as the python lunged toward the bakery owner. He barely dodged, the snake's head missing him by inches. Emily gasped, clutching Sarah a little tighter. Focus. We can't let it get distracted. Through the tumult, Emily realized that the boy had thrown another rock, aiming for the python's eye. It landed with a soft thud, startling the beast, as it turned partially away from the bakery owner. Simon, kid! Get back! She cried out again, torn between the urge to save him and the need to protect Sarah and the leopard. But the boy was locked in a fierce determination that not even Emily's cries could break. He gripped another stone, a look of pure resolve on his face. The python struck again, but missed, dragging itself away from the throng. The villagers seized the moment, chanting louder than before, pushing the serpent back in an unfamiliar dance of defiance and unity. Then out of the corner of her eye, Emily saw a flash of red. It was an old garage door left ajar at the edge of the crowd. If we can lure it that way, into the garage, she murmured, formulating a plan. We might trap it. Trap it? Sarah whispered, unsure. Is that safe? We don't have a choice. We have to protect you and the leopard. Her words hung heavy in the air, but Emily felt the resolve blooming in her chest again. Everyone! To the garage! Draw it away! With a collective roar, the crowd surged toward the garage, raking sticks and stones in unison. The python swung its massive head, angered by the sudden movement. It began to follow, confused, leaving behind the bakery owner who barely caught his breath. Emily glanced at the boy for a brief moment. Move, please! She shouted, willing him to take a step back. As the hissing snake turned toward the thrumming crowd once more, Emily knew deep down that their desperation had transformed into something extraordinary. But then she realized, what if the garage wasn't their only way out? For an instant, a deeper question gnawed at her thoughts. What if the python wasn't just a monster they needed to battle? As the villagers steered the beast toward the garage, Emily felt the hairs on her neck rise. This was far from over. Would they manage to trap the serpent before it turned on them? Would they risk everything for freedom? With every heartbeat, the air thickened, the stakes mounting. What was lurking in the shadows of the situation? The potential answers danced just out of reach, waiting to stir the chaos further. And then something unexpected shifted in the crowd behind them. Emily turned, sensing the pulse of something monumental about to unfold. What had she overlooked that could change everything? Emily's heart raced as she scanned the crowd. She felt an electric shift in the air, a tension that hung like a coiled spring, ready to snap. The villagers, once a unified front, seemed to falter, their eyes darting nervously from the snake to the gathering shadows. "Keep moving," she urged, her voice slicing through the chaos. As they ran toward the garage, Emily's pulse quickened, the python's hissing mixed with the rising clamor of the crowd. With every step, she grappled with fear of the unknown lurking in the dark corners, mingling with the desperation of their current plight. Then, as if summoned by her anxiety, a loud crash erupted from behind them. Emily spun to see old Mr. Henderson, the town's handyman, tumble to the ground, his legs tangled in a tangle of tools and scraps. "Help!" he shouted, his voice breaking. "Get him!" Emily yelled, instinctively breaking away from Sarah for a fraction of a second. She pushed her way through the throng of villagers, heart hammering as she grabbed Mr. Henderson's arm and pulled him upright. "You okay?" she asked, though his ashen face told her everything. "I think I just sprained my ankle," he grimaced. The situation was spiraling. "Just get me out of here." With a quick nod, she steered him onward. The crowd pressed forward, and a collective roar rose like a wave crashing against the shoreline. The python, distracted by the noise, thrashed about, creating a perilous barrier between them and safety. Just as they reached the garage, the tension escalated again. The little boy was still there, resolute, still clutching his rocks with white-knuckled determination. "Hey! You need to go!" Emily shouted, arms flailing impatiently. "No," he declared fiercely. "I can help." His courage was commendable, but it felt reckless. The python was flicking its tongue, narrowing its focus, and Emily felt a jolt of panic twist in her gut. "Just please," she begged, her voice softening despite the urgency. "You don't have to do this. You're so brave. Let the adults take care of it now." But the boy shook his head stubbornly, his gaze locked on the snake. "I want to save the leopard." In that moment, his words drew Emily in hard. The danger broke her resolve. They weren't just fighting for their own survival anymore, there was a creature in peril right alongside them. The realization cracked something open in her chest, a flicker of unyielding hope. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just about the python. She turned back toward the crowd. "If we can get it to the garage, we can keep it at bay long enough to help the leopard." With that, a voice erupted from the back, someone she barely recognized. "I can draw it." It was the bakery owner again, standing taller than before, an unyielding light in his eyes. "Do it!" Emily shouted, her heart uniting with the villagers. The collective agreement surged through the crowd as they took one step back and created an opening. The bakery owner sprang forward, waving his arms, shouting toward the python. "Over here, you ugly serpent!" The python turned, distracted once more, and Emily felt an arrow of hope pierce the anxiety enveloping them. "Now!" she yelled, rallying everyone to join arms, pushing closer to the garage. As they surged forward together, she could see life stirring in the shadows. But what they didn't foresee was the deeper secret hidden beneath that monstrous exterior, something that would change everything. Would they manage to quell the python long enough to rescue the leopard? And what kind of truth lingered behind those golden eyes that shone quietly in the darkness? As Emily and the villagers pressed forward, the tension thickened. The python turned, its massive body now swaying like a pendulum, ready to strike. Emily felt her breath hitch in her throat. It was as if time slowed. The cries of the villagers faded into a dull roar, and all she could hear was the rapid thumping of her heart. "Keep pushing," she urged, her voice barely breaking through the cacophony. The bakery owner was still shouting, dancing wildly in front of the python, diverting its attention. A surge of admiration washed over Emily for the bravery of that man. She squeezed Mr. Henderson's arm, who staggered beside her, helpless but determined. "Just a little closer," she shouted. The crowd, once filled with reluctance, now shared a flicker of resolve. They moved like a wave, rolling forward toward the garage. Emily's eyes darted between the garage door and the python. Would they be able to reach safety, or would the monster surge forward and block their escape? Suddenly, the little boy darted past her, rock still gripped tightly in his small hands. "I can help," he yelled again, his voice ringing clear amidst the chaos. "Wait," Emily pleaded, reaching out, but he was already on the move. The boy hurled a rock directly at the python, striking its scales with a dull thud. To her surprise, the snake recoiled, its forked tongue flicking, confused and enraged. "Great job," Emily shouted, almost incredulously. But her relief was short-lived. The python swung its massive head towards the boy, its dark eyes narrowing. Everything snapped back into focus. Emily's heart lurched. "Get back!" she screamed, scrambling towards him. He was just a few feet from the serpent now, his bravery turning into recklessness. Emily lunged forward, grabbing the boy's waistband and pulling him back just as the python lunged. The air thickened with adrenaline. It was close, a moment of sheer terror where life stood still. "Thank you," he gasped, wide-eyed. "Please, no more rocks. We need to work together," she whispered urgently. With the snake distracted, Emily seized the moment. "To the garage. Now!" she bellowed, rallying everyone. They pushed through the doorway, tumbling inside and piling up against the walls. The garage, once a space for tools and repairs, felt like a makeshift fortress against the furious beast outside. The dynamics shifted. They were no longer just survivors, they were protectors now, bound by a common cause. Emily scanned the area, her eyes landing on a tattered net hanging from a rafter. An idea sparked in her mind. "We can trap it," she shouted, pointing towards the net. "If we can just get it to move into this corner." The bakery owner nodded, capering to the net and taking hold of it. "On my count, we'll push again. 1, 2, 3. Emily raised her arms, and with a powerful shout, they all surged forward, forcing the python back toward the net. The creature hissed and writhed, furious and frightful. Emily could see the fear reflected in its golden eyes. Of fear she began to understand. This wasn't just about safety, it was about justice for all creatures involved. Just as they thought they were gaining the upper hand, the doors to the garage rattled ominously, and a booming voice called from outside. "What's going on in there?" Emily froze, dread creeping up her spine. Who else was coming? And what did they want? Would the arrival of new players tip the scales, or bring the calamity they had strived to avoid? The rattling intensified, and a sense of foreboding filled the air. Emily's heart raced as she turned to the villagers, their faces a mix of determination and fear. "We need to be quiet," she whispered, motioning for them to lower their voices. The python was still coiled and furious, but if they could just keep it contained long enough. The booming voice from outside called again, sharper this time. "Open the door. We need to know what's happening." It was the sheriff, accompanied by a few deputies. Relief intertwined with dread. They brought experience but also the possibility of chaos. Emily took a deep breath. "We have to hold off for just a little longer," she said, her voice steady. "Let us focus on the python. If we can trap it first, we'll be safer when they come in." Emily glanced back at the garage doors. They seemed flimsy against the menace that was lurking on the other side, but the crack of light shining through gave her hope. They could control this, together. "Ready?" she prompted, holding her breath as she sensed a nod of agreement from the bakery owner. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. This time, they pushed with all their might, each villager's efforts blending into a single force of adrenaline and courage. The python slithered backward into the corner, its sleek body twisting as it tried to gauge its captors. They focused on the net, a heavy fall of fabric that could ensnare the beast. Emily felt a surge of hope as the creature hissed, the sound echoing off the garage walls. With every inch they gained, the tension cracked like a whip in the air around them. "Keep pushing. Don't let it come back," she shouted, urgency vibrating in her voice. Just as they seemed to gain the upper hand, a loud bang echoed from outside, reverberating through the cramped space. "What was that?" someone whispered, eyes wide. "Stay focused," Emily urged, heart pounding. But the question loomed larger, like the python itself. Was it an accident, or something worse? Then came the clatter of footsteps approaching. "Step back. We're coming in." The sheriff's voice was a command, and Emily felt the adrenaline hit her like a wave. "We can't let them in yet," she hissed, her eyes darting from the door to the snake. "The last thing we need is for them to start firing." The door rattled again, pressure building on the hinges. Emily's heart raced once more as she realized the python was shifting, sensing the incoming threat beyond the door. Instead of retreating, it prepared to lunge. "Now!" she shouted, desperation igniting her voice. As the villagers thrust the net toward the angry serpent, Emily caught a glimpse of its frustrated, golden eyes. In that moment, she saw more than just a beast. She saw an animal frightened and cornered, just like them, a reflection of their own struggle. The python lunged, and so did the villagers, throwing the net wide. There was a loud thwack as the net enveloped the creature, pinning it partially against the wall. The beast writhed inside its fabric constraints, but they had it at least for the moment. Amidst the struggle, the door creaked open, surprising all inside. "What's the situation?" Deputies stepped in, guns drawn, eyes wide as they took in the chaotic scene. Emily's breath caught, realizing they hadn't fully prepared the sheriffs for such madness. Would their actions be seen as foolishness? Or could they be seen as a team, united in both survival and compassion? "Trust us," she pleaded, heart pounding like a drum. But as she glanced back at the python, she knew they weren't out of the woods yet. The creature was still wild, and they had more to contend with than just rescuing one animal. Will they successfully tame the beast without causing chaos in the process? Or will the intervention of external forces prove more catastrophic than the creature itself? The sheriff's deputies stood frozen, their eyes darting between the python thrashing in the net and the villagers who had just acted with desperate bravery. Emily took a step forward, raising her hands to indicate peace. "Hold your fire," she urged, her voice steady yet pleading. "This isn't what you think. We're not the enemy here." The deputies exchanged uncertain glances. The sheriff, a tall man with a weathered face, stepped closer. "What in the world is going on? That snake could kill you all." "It's scared," Emily said, her voice softening as she glanced at the python. "Like we were. But we can help it. We don't want it harmed." "That's a big ask," one of the deputies remarked, eyes narrowed as he lowered his weapon slightly. "How do we know it won't turn on you once it's free?" "I know we need to think here," Emily replied, heart racing, "but if it gets loose while you're all in here, it will be chaos for everyone. We can find a way to safely contain it, but we need cooperation." The sheriff sighed, looking at the villagers bracing themselves, and then at his men, who were still visibly tense. "All right, but if that thing starts moving toward us." "Understood." Emily nodded, stomach twisting with anxiety as she turned back to the villagers. "Listen, we have a chance to get this right, but we need to work together. We can't treat it like an enemy if we hope to save it." With that, the tension hung heavy in the air. The python emitted another hissing sound, and Emily felt fear ripple through the group. She could sense that they were at a crossroads. If they could pull this off, it would mean not just saving the creature, but also the fragile alliance of fear and courage that had formed in this moment. They took a collective breath, hands ready with determination. "On three again." Emily's voice cut through the doubt. "Are we ready to do this? Can we save something that scares us?" 1, 2, 3. The villagers stepped forward, moving with a newfound sense of purpose. They steadied the net, wrapping it more securely around the python but also softer, to avoid harming it. The creature wriggled, and for an instant, Emily felt a strange connection. Its life flickered in the balance, just like hers and everyone else's in the room. Gently. Hold tight, but don't crush it, she instructed. The python temporarily paused, sensing their intent had changed. It was as if they could almost hear each other's hearts beat. Just then, the sheriff's voice rose. We need to back off a bit, let it breathe. Keep it calm. And get some rope or something secure. One of the deputies sprinted out, and the sheriff slowly moved to stand beside Emily. What's your plan? We need to give it an opening, a way out that doesn't involve walls or weapons, she said, grounding herself in resolve. A chance to escape, to calm down. As the villagers worked to keep the snake steady, Emily placed her hands on the net where the creature twisted. She could feel the tension in its muscles, the pulse of life that both terrified and entranced her. Just breathe, she whispered, heart pounding. You're safe, safe with us. But a sudden crash echoed from outside, rattling the garage structure once more. The moment shattered, and fear crept back in. Emily whirled around as the sheriff barked commands, readying for whatever chaos was about to unfold. Stay alert, he shouted over the rising din. What had just disrupted their fragile peace? Was this the moment everything would spiral out of control? Emily's mind raced with possibilities. They had to act fast. In that swirling chaos, she felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on her, but she also felt hope flickering like a candle in the dark. Could they really help the python before facing whatever danger lurked beyond the door? Would they be able to save the day, or would everything unravel before their eyes? The tension in the garage climbed as more footsteps echoed from outside. Emily's heart raced. The python thrashed in the net, sensing chaos not just from the villagers, but from the looming uncertainty outside. Just then, as if the universe synchronized their beat, the sheriff stepped closer, studying Emily's determination. What's your plan? He asked, steady but keen, eyes narrowing on the python as it coiled and hissed. We need to give it an escape, a chance to calm down, Emily replied, her voice unwavering despite the panic swirling. It's terrified, just like us. If we can open up a path for it, we might save both the python and ourselves. The villagers murmured, stealing glances at one another, their faces lit by a flickering hope they all shared. I'll help. Sarah, the brave young girl, stepped forward. Her petite hand shook slightly, but her resolve stood strong. We can work together. Yes. Emily exclaimed, feeling momentum rise in the crowded garage. Everyone, we need to make an opening at the back of the garage. Let us gently guide the python away from the door, to the back. It's our best chance. With a flurry of activity, the villagers formed a line behind Emily, inching toward the net. Sarah, her eyes gleaming with fierce determination, took the lead, chanting, "We can do this." It was the rallying cry they needed. Okay. On 3. Emily shouted again. The crowd pulled together, pushing just enough to keep the python occupied while maintaining a gentle grip. 1, 2, 3. With one collective effort, they shifted the net toward the back of the structure, encouraging the python away from the doorway while giving it a wide berth. The massive creature paused, sensing the shift, its golden eyes flickering between the humans and the newly opened space behind it. Now. Guide it through. Emily urged, feeling a rush of adrenaline. The python hesitated, but the villagers, shouting encouragement, moved rhythmically, clapping and making noise, creating an atmosphere of support instead of fear. There was a raw power in their unity, a feeling that they had transformed from afraid townsfolk into protectors of life, and then it happened. With a swift shift, the python coiled around, drawing closer to the opening. It seemed to sense that the noise was a signal of safety. Each determined cry from the crowd accompanied the serpent as they gently nudged it out, creating a barrier between the door and their growing hopes. Keep it calm. Emily called, feeling her chest swell with a mix of fear and pride. At last, the python slithered closer to the opening, and a wild wave of intense emotion surged through the crowd. This was it. As the last stretch of tail slipped through the exit, Emily felt relief wash over her, mingling with disbelief. "We did it!" someone shouted as the villagers erupted into cheers. But just then, everything shifted again. As the python fully exited, a loud crash echoed from the door. Emily turned, eyes wide, as the sheriff and his deputies sprang into action, guns drawn, aiming toward the entrance where chaos spilled in. "What now?" someone gasped, fear creeping back. The deputies rushed in, eyes darting between the python's retreating form and the panicking crowd. "What's going on?" one shouted, bewilderment replacing the earlier tension. Emily quickly waved her hands, stepping forward. "It's all right. We just saved it." "The python saved it?" one deputy questioned incredulously. "Yes. We were working together." Emily's heart raced again, not for fear of the snake, but for the fragile alliance they had built. "It's scared, just like we were. We can't hurt it any more than we can each other." The sheriff seemed to process the scene before him, the villagers visibly shaken, the python safely gone. And then, as if realizing the depth of what they had achieved, a subtle change washed over him. "Okay," he said slowly, lowering his weapon. "But everyone needs to remain calm. Let us regroup and talk this through." Silence filled the garage as villagers looked around, processing what had just happened. No one had anticipated the fear and courage they would face together, bridging gaps between community, bravado, and vulnerability. Emily scanned their faces and found warmth in companionship. An elderly lady began clapping, and soon everyone joined, laughter spilling into the air as a wave of relief swept through. "Thank you, Emily." Sarah beamed, her innocent bravery shining brightly. "Thank you, all of you," Emily replied, heart swelling. They had transformed a terrifying ordeal into one of discovery of purpose and connection. As they stepped out into the daylight, the town embraced Emily, their bonds forever strengthened in a tale of unexpected heroism. The python was free, and so were they. Together, they realized they could face whatever lay ahead with courage and compassion. So, the final lesson emerged not of fear, but of unity, of understanding, and of the endless connection of life that weaves every thread of their shared humanity. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, the golden glow encompassed the fading shadows of the past, illuminating hope for those who dared to stand together. Don't wait. This is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive stories that change lives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others share in this journey, and please comment below your reactions and feelings about this inspiring ending. You need to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Every act of support counts. Don't wait not even one more second to help spread the light.